Millie Molly is one of those random kids shows that no one really seems to remember or even know about at this point in time. It was based off of a children's book series of the same name and revolved around the life lessons learned by two girls, Millie and Molly. These girls like the same things and do things together, but in actual reality they come from very different backgrounds. The show wasn't really as emotional or heavy as other shows like Doug, Arthur or Hey Arnold, and was somewhat geared towards young girls, but it was still a good show nonetheless. I wasn't really the biggest fan of it though, since I only watched it when it was on a channel called Tiny Pop near the latest hour, and I didn't really watch much of it since I was just playing on my DS, and my parents treated the show as something to distract me. And yes, there would be a lost episode creepypasta on the internet, not really scaring the shit out of people at all, just making them roll their eyes to heaven. This one was somewhat different however. I was about 16 when this happened. I was on the internet looking at some tutorials on how women do their eyelashes without hurting their eyes with excess, because that night I was going to a graduation party at my uncle's. After processing the video in my mind and attempting to do it correctly and succeeding, I decided to look in my subscription box and check out what sort of random videos people I like had uploaded. One of those videos was called Puberty. The thumbnail was a surprisingly well-drawn picture of an anime eye with tears coming out of it. I clicked on the video and read the description. It read, "This is a series of animatics from a lost episode of the animated kids program Millie Molly. This episode was cancelled due to its emotional content involved in it." I pressed play, and sat back to cringe at a horribly put together and horribly animated lost episode creepypasta. The intro started out as normal with clips from past episodes of the show but without any music, and it was not animatic based since it would obviously be a waste of time to redraw these scenes. The next thing seen in the video was not from any part of the show that I remember. It was a very different title card, where instead of Millie and Molly sitting on a park bench putting their arms around one another and looking at each other wearing dresses, this title card showed the park bench but no one was there at all. There was no title of the episode, mind you, nor the name of the person who had written the books either, or the person who had written the episode at all. I thought to myself, well, this is starting to fucking suck. The video then cut to a silent shot of a school that was very different to the one seen in the actual show. Instead of just a bungalow-styled school with a jungle gym outside the back, the school seen in the video was bigger and much wider. The episode fully began inside a classroom, where a teenage girl was writing down some important things her teacher was talking about. This teacher was not Miss Blythe obviously. It was a man with no hair. This teenage girl happened to be Molly. She didn't really look like herself though. Her hair had been cut short, showing her pierced left ear, and her eyes had bags under them, making her look like she hadn't gotten enough sleep at all. The scene then cut to another scene which depicted Molly sitting at a table of friends. They were chatting about something. Behind them was another table with another set of girls. One of those girls had curly hair and was black. It was Millie. She looked really angry somehow. Her cold-hearted angry stare was obviously directing towards Molly. Molly didn't see it because of her sitting with her back faced at Millie. The next scene is where things started to get pretty serious in a way. The next scene showed Molly at a disco sitting down with her head in her hand. As she was about to take a drink, Millie came up behind her, grabbed her by the neck and threw her onto the floor. She stared intently at her, looking really pissed off. The next scene turned into a physical cat fight, as the two girls started beating each other up. What the hell happened between the two of them? I have no goddamn clue since there was no audio in the video. The fight resulted in Molly being thrown onto a table. Before Millie was about to hurt and possibly cripple her, Molly got up and ran out of the door as fast as she could before more damage could be done. Millie stared angrily before picking up the bottle and throwing it against the wall. The next day in the same school, Molly looked way worse than before. One thing noticeable was a black eye she got from the fight. The teacher looked at her as if she was alright, and Molly smiled at him and looked back down at her notebook. The notebook showed a cartoony drawing of her and Millie when they were kids. She looked at it and chalked back a couple of tears. She put her hand up and told the teacher something and ran out of the room. That night, Millie's dad was yelling at her about what had happened at the disco, and supposedly told Millie to stay in her room and think about what she did. She rebelled against that and pushed her dad out of the door and slammed it shut. She sat at her desk, with her head in her hands. She got out a piece of paper and wrote a paragraph. It read, "Molly, by the time you and your family will read this, it will not be the same for you anymore. Me taking our friendship for granted and money at the same time was a horrible mistake I made. All the abuse I put you through. I'm sorry. Goodbye, Molly. The next scene depicted a scene with Molly crying in her mom's shoulder about something. Her dad came in and put his hand on Molly's shoulder, comforting her. It cut to another scene where there was a funeral going on. Attending the funeral was most of the characters from the original show as middle-aged adults and teenagers, except for Mr. Limpy since he was an old character and had possibly died from old age. A shot of who was in the coffin showed Millie, with the note she wrote pinned on her coat. Molly walked over to it, looked at the note and picked it up. Reading it, she broke down, crying her eyes out, folded her arms out and cried on the coffin. The video ended on that sad scene. I was pretty much shell-shocked to say the least, but at the same time I was impressed with whoever made this, because to me this was a lesson for starting teenagers. One wrong move in a friendship could lead to something horrible. I never mentioned anything about it at my uncle's cause I didn't really care about it that much at that point, but whenever someone says the name Millie Molly the video always springs to mind and it sometimes gives me a tingle in my eye. Nonetheless I still watch it when I rarely get the chance. So yeah. Peace out y'all.